Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're going to talk about the large change to RB ground battles which has come in this patch in the game mechanics section. Now a lot of people are going to point towards helicopters as some meta-defining thing, and I think that's fair enough. For me personally, I still haven't seen the impact of helicopters, and also they're only a top tier. This change affects every tier, and it is the change to SP. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out the change for you in the changelog, and then we're going to go through pros, cons, how to fix the cons, and also my own opinion. So that's the order we're going to go in. So, in RB ground battles, the cost of respawning ground vehicles has been reduced by half, and for reserve vehicles has been removed altogether. The accrual of respawn scores has been reduced for all actions in RB ground battles by 30%, or approximately 30%. So how does this work? So if you have played ground RB, what you will have realized is when you spawn in a vehicle first, it will have an SP score. If you look on its little card at the top where it says, click in to battle, it will have a number, and then it will have SP. And then in the top right, it will say spawn points, blah, 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 a number. So that spawn will cost you a certain amount of spawn points. Now before, in other, updates, so update 1.79 and before, the amount of points was double what it is now. So in effect, what this has done is it has reduced the initial spawn point cost of every ground vehicle in the game by half. Now, there is also a mechanic where your second, third, fourth, and fifth respawn gets incrementally more expensive as you go along. And this system is still in place, but your starting point is still reduced by half, meaning that your second spawn is much easier to get into if it's a ground vehicle compared to before. The kicker to this, though, and something you do have to take into account, is even though they've also reduced the initial spawn cost by half, what they've also done is they have reduced the amount of points you get by 30% in all of your actions in realistic battles. So this means capping a zone, getting assists, shooting enemies, dealing damage, killing people. All of this gets reduced amount by 30%. But because it's not just your first respawn that gets affected by this reduced by half, the second one as well does, and the third one also does when it comes to ground forces, it means that you have much more of an opportunity to get into your second spawn of a ground vehicle or third spawn, or even your spawns for aircraft. And the way it works for aircraft is if your initial spawn is less spawn points than it was before, then you need to accrue less spawn points in order to get into an aircraft. For an example, my BMP. I've been playing the BMP-1 and also the BMP-2 over the last few days. And what you have to do is pretty much just get shot, and you can or shoot somebody, and if you get one assist, you are able to get into a fighter. It's as simple as that. So you just have to get one assist, where before you would have to either cap a zone and maybe hurt somebody, maybe you get 2 kills, something like that. Now it is incredibly easy to get into an aircraft. So this doesn't just promote, the use of other ground vehicles, it also promotes the use of aircraft, meaning that overall, in every scenario, they've made it easier for a person to get into a second spawn. And then from there, it is easier to get into a third ground spawn, but about the same for aircraft, if we're talking about a third aircraft spawn. So that's basically how the system is working, if we talk about it from that point. Now, obviously, with every game mechanic change, with every, change in what people are used to, there is going to be pros and cons to this. So we're going to go through the pros first and then the cons. So here we go. The trusty notepad is available for this wonderful thing. And if we scroll down to here, we can see the pros. So the pros are, of course, more tank respawns. This means that if you get donked early in a match, then of course you can get into more tanks. It means that you'll see more different tanks on the battlefield. Before, the meta was pretty much, bring a medium tank or specific heavy tanks, and that's about it, or a light tank if you want to get in an aircraft. Now there's a lot more flexibility with whatever you want to play. So with that said, what that means is it promotes a little bit of variation on the battlefield. The last few days is the first time in a very long time I've seen stuff like charioteers, because people are actually able to, afford them and bring them into battle as a third or fourth spawn if they're using the Carnarvon or Centurion or something like that, and it's been lovely to see. It also means that the battles last longer, as you can see, longer matches, and for me that means that there is more opportunity to be tactical. It means that patience is rewarded a little bit more, and the defensive nature is also, it's actually, if you're more defensive minded, then what you have to do is you can't just hold down an area for, an elongated amount of time, because if you did that in the old system, you'd be able to clear out pretty much anything that came along there. And you knew if somebody spawned in again to come after you, then what they would have to do is get in an aircraft and bomb you, which there's not a lot you could do about it, or they'll get in a second spawn of a tank and then come after you. Now, if you are holding down a corridor, you kill 3 or 4 tanks, you have a good chance that 2 to 3 to 4 more tanks are going to know exactly where you are going down that, battlefield, and therefore, with that said, it promotes the idea that you have to actually move around a little bit more. You can't just stay in one place and win the match. So this does, in effect, help with the issue of just holding down areas and moving on. Because the easiest way to play War Thunder, if you have a team which is fully on, it's working together, is all you have to do is just hold down 2 zones and then just wait for the enemy team to push you. You could take them out very easy in the old system. Nowadays, it's not so much, because once you take somebody out and they spawn back in, well, guess what? They know where you are sitting, meaning that they can either avoid that area or they can come and hunt you. So it does promote different ways of playing the game, which is nice. Chance of comebacks is greater. This ties into what I was just saying. So what a lot of times would happen in the old system is the team would win an initial battle, whether it was in a key place on the battlefield or for a key area. And what this would do is it would put the other side on the back foot. It would mean that killing 3 to 4 to maybe 5 tanks was very key to the victory, and once those were dead, there wasn't really a lot you could do. It felt like matches were done after the 5-minute mark after the initial engagement, very much like how it feels sometimes in Air Realistic. So, with this new system, if you decrease the SP across the board, it means that the people who were taken out very early are able to spawn back in and are able to actually, go after the enemies that took them out. This means that instead of the people who maybe there's 1 or 2 or 3 of them coming to help you, instead you are going to get a wave of allies coming in who were taken out before. Now, they'll still come slightly more in dribs and drabs, but it'll mean that you'll have a more cohesive force, or at least a larger contingent of force to help you out. So that should counteract the snowball effect that does affect War Thunder quite a lot in ground forces, and definitely in Air Realistic. Obviously, this doesn't affect Air Realistic, but it's just something to point out. It also reduces RNG impact. We've all been in the situation where you have been going along, you're in a great position, you are working a flank or a rock, or you are trying to catch the enemy out, and one of the enemy team sees you, and you are fighting him, you are, let's say trading blows, you haven't, killed each other, but you've each done damage. Then an artillery shell flies down and hits your tank and one-shots you. This situation is incredibly annoying, especially if you're in a heavy tank. Used to happen a lot in stuff like the Jumbo, and also stuff like the KV and the Tiger II. This meant that you were out of the battle pretty early on, and it wasn't any of your fault. and this is the inherent issue with RNG elements of the game. What they can do is promote, interesting things to happen, such as people, playing slightly differently, maybe, each match being different because of the RNG effects, but it can also mean that you have a bad experience because you're on the bad end of that RNG impact. So, with that said, I think it's much better that it reduces the RNG impact, meaning that if you do get taken out early, you have an opportunity for redemption, even though you got taken out by something that wasn't your fault at all. You can play perfectly fine in ground forces and still get hit by a stray artillery strike, or maybe a person shoots you, and because of ping differences, theirs goes through, yours doesn't actually get there in time. What this new system does is it reduces the impact of those things. And then, of course, it gives you more chance to carry the game. This War Thunder, the way I describe it, is it's a team game run by individuals, and the individual performances, because team cohesion is quite hard to do in War Thunder unless you're in a 3 or 4 man squad. So with that said, if you are in a situation where you are pushing forward and doing really well, and then you get taken out and the team starts coming back, well, guess what? You get that secondary spawn at a lower level, so you can come back in, do some damage, and, keep going. It pretty much gives bad, good, average, whatever players more respawns to do more on the battlefield on both sides. So if you have more chance to be able to do stuff, then the idea is the better players are going to do more, and the worst players are still going to, do a little bit less. So it gives you more chances to actually come out on top in the scenario. So those are the pros to the system that I can see, or at least the main pros, and then let's go into the cons. So the first one is that it promotes worse play, and what this means is people are rewarded more in this system than they are in the old system for either dying early or doing the repetitively what would be seen as wrong thing in the game. So let's say you're in a heavy tank and you just charge into the center every time. In the old system, what this would do is it would you would be taken out very quickly. And even if you're in if you were down tiered in a jumbo, you would still get taken out pretty quickly if somebody knew what they was doing, shooting the machine gun ports, the cupola, something like that, and you wouldn't be able to get a secondary spawn. In this new system, you can play that tactic and be able to get away with it and get your secondary spawn because it's going to cost less for you to do so, and you're in your heavy. So overall, it is giving people more bonus, I suppose, for doing the incorrect play. So what would happen in the old system is if you were in that scenario where every match you were walking in, getting killed, and it was, going badly for you, then there's two ways to do it. You either suck it up and say, okay, I'm not doing too well, I need to play with the system, I need to play with the game, I need to get a bit more experience, I need to work out how to play this properly, and then I will be able to get my other tank spawns, then I'll be able to not die as quickly. And then, there's the other side of the issue, where you say, screw it, I'm not playing this anymore, it's too frustrating, I don't want to learn. In this new system, what it does is it gets rid of that element, or at least decreases that element where you have to learn the game. And instead, what it does is it promotes the mediocrity that we see, so every player is able to get more than one respawn instead of the better players, who will then from there, be rewarded for doing well. And the next one is larger repair costs. Obviously, if you bring more vehicles into a game, it's going to cost you more, because you're going to have to repair more. Also, with a system like this, you may be a little bit more laissez-faire with your vehicles, so they'll die a lot more, meaning that you'll have to pay more repairs. Obviously, the issue with this is we've seen some quite ridiculous repair costs in this update, and it isn't just the M1 IP. There are many out there which make absolutely no sense. I'm looking at French rank 4 as an example of this. there is no noticeable increase in research. What this means is if you actually play a... Right, so the best way to actually describe this. So from about 0 to 3 kills in ground forces, there is a definite, quite large, distinct difference in research if you get 0 kills and 3 kills. But from the period of 3 kills to 6 kills, it is a lot less noticeable on the number that you get at the end of the match. And then, when you get up to 11 or 12 or something like that, it's very, very similar to the amount of RP that you get for that 6 kill mark, meaning that there is depreciating research that you get over time while being in the battle. So if your battles are longer, you're having to kill more people because people are respawning more, you are not compensated for doing that, meaning that it leads into the next point that you get less research for your time efficiency. And this means that because of the new research costs that have been added, well, not new ones, but just more very, very high RP tanks and also, high RP helicopters and all of this, it's going to affect that in quite a large way in ground realistic. It means that it's going to take you longer time in order to get these machines because you're going to be spending more time in battles getting less research instead of, doing the let's play for 5 minutes, let's do well in that 5 minutes, let's get out of that battle, let's get into the next one, and so on and so forth, and keep doing it like that. The next issue is that it doesn't solve the issue of rushing cap and getting CAS. One of the interesting, little tidbits that this thing had was the fact that it says that reserves are free. And with this, it means that you can rush a cap with something like a BT5, BT7, cap it, and then die to something after shooting it once, and you can get into a jet, you can get into a helicopter, you can get into whatever the hell you want. And it means that you are set in a situation where you have CAS and the enemy cannot defend against it, because the meta will never change to the point where people will take AA first, because the AAs do not match up well against mediums and heavy tanks, and people want to be able to match up well against their opponents in the initial phase of the game. With that, this system does not solve this issue. It just doesn't even touch it. If anything, it promotes it by making reserves free in the system, and meaning that you can just rush in and do crazy things. Also, on top of it, what it doesn't fix, which is more of a side point, not really to do with this, so that's why, it's not mentioned. It doesn't stop people in top tier games taking reserves just to get knocked out quickly, and, well, actually, no, it does solve that, never mind. Disregard everything I just said in the last 20 seconds. The next con is lineups with no legitimate backups. A great example of this would be late tier Japan, would be the Hori production and what it has around it. I know a lot of people are fans of, the Type 60 SPRG, but I actually think the little light tank that the Japs have, with the 2 recoilless rifles is pretty fun, but I wouldn't class it as a good backup to the Hori production. I'd just say it's fun at what it does. On top of this, there are other BRs, such as, as I said, late tier Japan. You could have even late tier French, once the AMX 40 is dead. You have some very lackluster ones compared to other, nations. And then if you look at the 3 major nations, they're fine, but the issue is, every other nation. So for the British, your backup to the Challenger is the Chieftain. And I know a lot of people sing the praises of the Chieftain, but it ain't got hell on the Leopard 2K, the T-64B, or the M1 Abrams, which are all the backups now to the other 3 top tier nations. So with that said, it doesn't help this situation, and it also may even make it even more of a drag on the majority of players, because it means you have to play these substandard machines against machines which are obviously better than it. Now let's go through how to fix the cons, because obviously the pros we don't really need to fix, they're the pros to this system, so let's go through the cons. So promotes worst play. The Main thing that this system does is it means that worse players will get more experience playing the game. And it means that over time they will get better. I understand a lot of people do believe that some players will just never get better at the game no matter how much experience they have. And that's true. There will be people like that. But you can't change them. So therefore, we shouldn't involve them in this. What this system does is it gives you more experience playing the game, so hopefully you will get better at it. Practice makes perfect and all of that wonderful stuff. And the way it does this is it keeps people in the game longer. As I said before, when I was talking about the con, you have this issue where, let's say you get battered over and over again. You have some people who will go, okay, I want to get better at this. So I'm going to work hard, I'm going to get better. And they become average to good players. Then you have the other side who are like, naff off. I'm going to go play a different game. I don't see the point in this. This is annoying. The system like this is keeping in these players here. These players, which are the ones who are saying, naff off, I don't want to get better at this game. And what it's doing is it's giving them a new lifeline in order to enjoy the game compared to what it was before. And so I think, even though it's a con that it promotes worse play, this will get better over time. If it doesn't get better over time, then fair enough. That's unfortunate. And it also just means that if a lot of people fall into these bad habits, it gives the better players more time to shine, which is something that can be, overcast in War Thunder. The next one is the larger repair costs. I personally believe that repair costs, at least the ones which are seen as troublesome, the M1IP, stuff like even the BMP, the stuff like some of the British rank 4s, the French rank 4s, they are incredibly expensive to play and make absolutely no sense when you compare them to the vehicles that they fight. So there are two options here. You either lower them to make it so you don't have to pay such a large repair bill, or you equalize them across the board. So the M1IP, I believe, caps out at 25,000. So what we do is we say Leopard 2A4 and also Type 90, you cap off at 25,000. And if we don't want to do that, then we cap them all at the Type 90s, which is, I believe, less than 10,000. I even believe the Leopard 2A4s is less than 10,000. So equalizing this will fix this. It will fix this problem, and I'm sure as in about a month or so, because the last time they did all of these research and economic changes was about a month after the update came out, and this was the update, I believe, it was either with the MBT-70 or the M1 Abrams, and they reduced a bunch of repair costs and fiddled about with the Silver Lions costs and made it a lot more bearable for the individual. So hopefully, with this, hopefully in about a month or so, this will be fixed. If not, then it's just an issue that will continue to plague the system at high tier. It even affects some machines at lower tier, but not too much. There are specific machines around like 6.0, 7.0, which I think I'll highlight in other videos just to show you how disparaging it is and the difference between these machines and other machines and how annoying it can be when you try and add up the numbers. The next one, no noticeable increase in RP, so take away the relationship of diminishing returns. It's simple as that. I know, obviously, this will mean that people will be able to get more research out of games, but what it will do is it will get people away from the mentality of spending 5 minutes into a game and going into the next one and the next one because they know that they've hit that RP cap by killing a few tanks and then they're moving on to the next one. It will get rid of that mentality and it will mean that you are given the prizes for doing well. One of the issues with diminishing returns is that the person who becomes in first place does not feel like they have won because the 5 or 6 people below him get exactly the same prize. If you are in a 100-meter sprint in the Olympics, and, obviously I'm not built for it, but let's say I'm much more of a javelin guy, but let's say I am in a 100-meter sprint in the Olympics, and I come first somehow, and then I go up to the podium and there are 6 people next to me with the same prize and the same medal, it ain't gonna feel good, is it? It ain't gonna feel good for me, it ain't gonna feel good for them, and if it does feel good for them, then what can you say? It just seems a bit odd. Maybe the 6th person feels good about it, but it would be much better if they just got rid of either this cap or this inverse relationship that we have towards time and research and kills. It would be much better for the game, and it would promote, once again, good play. Not just through kills, but also through caps, and also through everything like that. The next point is the less research for time efficiency, and as I said, solved it above. It doesn't solve the issue of rushing cap and getting CAS. The only way you're going to be able to fix this is if you make stuff like reserve vehicles a top tier cost stuff, or a mid-tier cost thing. So if you're not fighting in the bracket of 1-0 to 2-0, then just make reserves cost something, and then also add a timer for CAS, because you can still rush a cap with a light tank and be able to get into CAS straight away with this new system. It is not hard to do. I've done it many times in the BMP, getting myself into the TU2S, which is a really good ground attacker. You can kill 3 tanks in the first, you can get a cap, let's say you get a kill or an assist, and then you get in the TU2S, then with its 2 500s and 1000, you can nail 4 tanks in the first 2 minutes of a game. It's not hard to do. So even if you get rid of the the reserves being free, it's still an issue, so therefore we add a timer in for CAS. And what this means is you put an artificial timer saying that CAS is only allowed in after 5 minutes in the battle, or maybe 6 minutes or 7 minutes. Like, the time itself doesn't matter, but the idea of the timer does. And what this will mean is that you will have at least a ground forces battle for the first part of the game without having to worry about CAS coming in. And by the point of whatever time is, designed, people will be on their 2nd or 3rd spawn, so they'll either be coming in planes, or they'll be on the ground in SPAA, or something like a BMP2, which is wonderful at killing pretty much all machines in the air and the ground. Very fun machine. I'll get a review out pretty quick once I've got it fully upgraded. But yeah, that is the way you fix that. And if you don't do something like that, instead, what you'll just have is people bum rushing the spawns, playing particularly poorly, and just going in CAS and trying to wreck everything. I still don't think we're at the point that we were before, where CAS was incredibly strong. I'm, to be quite honest, not that worried about it. It doesn't really affect my playstyle, but I suppose if somebody really, likes heavy tanks and moving about, it will really affect them. So, yeah, I would just put a timer in. This would fix the whole thing. It would also mean after that timer happens, when people go into the air, there'll be an initial battle between fighters, attackers, and bombers. And for me, that would be really cool to see. I think that would be nice. It would be like a secondary wave of, attacks, where you have the initial tank hit, then you have the initial air hit, and it would be wonderful to watch. The last one is the lineups with no legitimate backup. So as I said, like the whole reproduction or the Type 90 or any part of a tree which isn't fully fleshed out. And the only way you can fix this is by adding new vehicles. You can add them, with the Type 90, the STC2's been brought up, the prototypes of the Type 90, but if you look at the historical data stuff that they did on it, then they pretty much just used the prototype for the Type 90 you see in game, but it's possible. You could add in stuff like that. For the whole reproduction, it's not as cut and dry, but that's the only way you're going to do it. You're going to have to add vehicles to the game which fill out and flesh out these lineups, and that is something we've seen over time. Like, if you look at the German tech tree, the American and the Soviet tech tree, it's very hard to find areas where you can't get at least 2 to 3 decent vehicles in it. For other trees, that is the issue. So hopefully, as I said, with time, it'll be solved. If not, the measure that we have now, which helps these out, is the issue, is backups. You can buy them in the Warbond shop, you can get them for very small amounts of war bonds. You can also get them through random battles. I don't think this is a fix, but it is an intermediary fix compared to one which would just be adding in the vehicles. So yeah, that's the best way of doing it, or at least adding it in. So what are my thoughts after going through the pros and cons and also playing a lot? I like it. I think it's good. I don't think a game should be too focused on skill. I think skill is a massive part of a PvP game, but it should not be the complete main focus. If it was the main focus of War Thunder, what we would have is people just being in one vehicle and one vehicle only, and whoever comes out on top wins. That is, what games like Quake used to do, which are seen as some of the most skillful games ever created. The one-on-one arenas or 2-on-2, 3-on-3, stuff like that. We need to find a balance in War Thunder to keep people enjoying and playing the game and not penalize them too much for, screwing up. I have been in many situations over the years in War Thunder where I personally haven't been doing too well, or maybe I have a stock vehicle, or maybe I'm using a vehicle which is subpar, and it's nice to know now that I have at least some kind of safety net where if I don't do so well in this vehicle, I have a chance in another vehicle which will be coming up, pretty soon. So, with that said, it gives me more options to be able to play the game. It means that I can run a lineup which is a little bit different, a little bit weird. It means that I can take out a tank destroyer first and not worry too much about not getting enough spawn points to get into the next vehicle. Can this system be abused? Yes. So could the old system. And every system will be abused. In this system, the way to abuse it is, of course, the CAS issue, which is the same issue as before. But do I think this is a step forward? Yes. I like having longer matches, I like having more competition, and I like that the RNG elements are squashed. Or at least made a lot worse. It has been infuriating over the last few days playing light tanks, because that's mainly what I play now. I play light tanks, I enjoy it, I enjoy the supportive aspect, and I enjoy the fact that you put yourself at a disadvantage in order to help your team. It's kind of like a support character in like a MOBA or something like that, kind of like a healer in a way, but obviously War Thunder's version. So you get the ability to scout, but you lose either, armor or gun strength or something like that. So I've been playing through the Char 25T and the BMP, and what I've seen is that I've been hit by artillery a lot and donked and just knocked out because people see where I am on the map and they just hit me because they know I'm going to get one shot by it even if the artillery shell doesn't hit me. Now, with this new system, at least I have a chance of coming back in a different vehicle from that. It also means that if I'm up-tiered, I have more chance of being able to kill the stuff which has, I've been up-tiered into. It means that I get more chances of killing things which are much better than I am, meaning that it is at least leveling the playing field in a little way, even though there are better ways of doing it. Now, because of that, I do think it is a better system than we had before. But the main issue is the RP cutoffs in matches and also the amount of money in Silver Lions that are being spent through repairs. And this is something that has to be at least looked at right now. And as I said, I hope in about a month's time or so, there is a look at the formula which is used for these economy changes and it is fixed. Because if not, there's going to be a lot of people running out of money really quickly. My Soviet 7-3 lineup is running me about 40 grand silver lines per game if I use 3 vehicles and they get knocked out. Like if the BMP-1, the IS-3 and my I-225 get knocked out, that's about 30 to 40 grand, somewhere in there. It is a crazy amount of money, and any money that I make on top of that is going to modifications or going to buying, other machines. So the profit margin now, compared to before, is incredibly smaller than what it was. So there either has to be a change in the amount of SL that you get, or a reduce on the penalties that you get from the repair. And if those two things are fixed, then for me, I'm completely fine with this system. I'm okay with giving players a second chance in a game. I don't think that everything should be down to skill. Because if that's the case, we have tournaments, we have squadron battles, we have all of that. Those are there for those scenarios. In random battles, you do need to sometimes promote the average player, and this is what this system does, while also not being a detriment to the good players, which is the key point in this whole thing. This does not negatively impact good players, but it does benefit the average to the less than average players. And to me, that is a decent system. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.